Let's get focused. Hey guys, so we're back with our third episode with Chef Melissa Eberly. Our first episode, Primi, we talked about her origin story, her career, her background, and what ultimately led her to pursuing a career as a chef, a professional chef, and being featured on Dr. Oz. Our second episode, Secondi, we deep dive what that entrepreneur journey looked like, some of the trials and tribulations that she ran into, and some of the things that she was able to do to know that she was on the right path. So today we're going to be discussing how to avoid burnout in your career and Melissa's take on that. Hopefully you guys can get some nuggets out of this that you can apply to your own life. Enjoy. So speaking about resiliency and avoiding burnout, I want to transition the conversation to part 3 of our series, Dolce. Melissa, when you and I talked early on, one thing that you wanted to drive was, really finding balance. And, I think that it sounds like you've done that really well. I don't know many chefs, but out of the chefs that I know, I don't know many of them that are willing to dance at their events. And so it sounds like you've found the Dolce in what you do, right? So talk to me a little bit about, we'll start with maybe routines, because it's I know with projection, I'm obsessed with what we do at projection. I'm obsessed with the people that we work with and our clients and the impact that we're generating. And there are things that I've put in place to ensure that there is balance that is maintained and that I don't get burned out. And luckily, I can say that regardless of working 12 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week for a year and a half, I've yet to be burned out. And that's, one of the validators that like, I know that I'm pursuing my passion. So with that, talk to me about the routines that you've created for yourself in order to create those boundaries.
Absolutely. And even before I get into the routines, I love that you said that you're not burnt out and that you're, on the right path, because I too have a career that I'm excited to wake up for every day. I don't feel like, I've never had the Sunday scaries. Of course, there's some weeks that are busier than others, a little bit more stressful, but I truly enjoy the career and the path that I've carved and I'm continuing to carve. And I feel like anybody, when you are aligned energetically with what you are truly meant to be doing and your soul's purpose and your life path, you will also feel that. So if you're doing a job or, something mundane that is draining you, you should truly reassess what you're doing. But back to your original question. I mean, yeah, health and wellness are a huge part of my lifestyle, and that is a non-negotiable. I mean, aside from being a chef, although I don't always cook gourmet meals for myself, for instance, summertime right now, my dinners pretty much consist of like a poke bowl, so to say. I'll do like a salad with the grains, some veggies, maybe a fish, protein in there, delicious dressing. But yeah, clean eating is at the core of who I am. I eat, breathe, and live a clean lifestyle. I work out at least 3 times a week, whether it's at the gym or doing activities that I love. I'm very active in the summertime. I'll bike ride, I'll rollerblade, I'll swim, golf, tennis. Granted, when my time allows me to do any or all of these, but I mean, I'm not doing them all every day. But I mean, these are the things that interest me. Music is a huge part of my life, so I'm frequently going to whether it's a rock concert or dancing. It's one of my favorite EDM DJs. Or the winter time, I'll go to see Broadway shows, living in the New York metro area, go to museums for inspiration. And then, of course, being a foodie and, dining out and just constantly staying active, doing things that I love without burning out. And, it's my mantra is work hard, play hard. Anybody that knows me knows that I always say that. But then, of course, there are times like, right now I've enjoyed quite a bit of my summer, but now I'm kind of like buckling down and focusing and getting ready for the fall to, launch other projects. So I know when to take time off, whether it be, traveling or, but then I know when there's time to get serious. And it's just a matter of finding that balance and then finding what sparks joy within you that'll make you happy in between, whatever it is that you're launching or in the midst of doing.
So it's not just like journaling. I'm realizing that it makes sense, right? Somebody that is a high performer operating at such a scale, you would have to counteract that with the balance at such a scale, which I think is interesting. Going back to there are things that I've implemented and I've tried kind of the 3 tips and tricks for maintaining a balanced life and trying to have maybe like I'm going to do this one thing every day that's going to ensure that I maintain balance. But that's not what balance is, right? That's like, I wish that I shared your passion for dancing. My legs are made of cement. But when looking at balance, I think that oftentimes we're sort of sold from a society that, hey, if you do yoga, you journal, you drink water, meditate 5 minutes a day, you're good. You check those balance blocks and you're set. But I think that with balance, it is literally that. So as much effort that you're putting into one endeavor in your life, you have to counteract that with the other endeavor. And unfortunately for a lot of people in society, they're sort of chained to a 9 to 5. And there's this experience that is boiling up throughout the week that they have to counteract, right? There's this like soul crushing job that they're a part of, or they're in a relationship that they're not happy with. And then they end up sort of binge drinking or binge partying or doing whatever these binge activities are. I wish that I had the self-discipline. Food is actually one of my indulgences. So that's why one of the reasons why I meal prep so much. And if I want something good to eat, I go to a restaurant where I can try to at least, pace myself. And so if you could boil yours down to, just for you, so this isn't really for the audience, please don't try to replicate Melissa's balance routine, but if you could kind of summarize or pick, what are your core things that you do to balance yourself out, what would those be? It sounds like you've achieved a very homeostatic approach to where you're able to have a variety of activities that you involve yourself in. Obviously, dancing is one of those. So along with that, what are the things that kind of recharge you, I guess I would say?
Yeah, I think definitely exercise recharges me when I have the time to cook. That also recharges me because I mean, I'm a chef. I'm still a passionate foodie. And then let's see, what would be a third pillar, so to say? Listening to music. Music truly is my oxygen. Even if I'm not dancing, I'm the type of person that I'm lucky if I turn my TV on maybe once a month. But if I'm journaling or working on a task or something, I almost always have music on in the background in some capacity.
Yeah, music was going to be my guess. I would not have guessed that cooking would have been one of your pillars. And when you say cooking, in what respect? Obviously not catering or meal prepping, but is that
Yeah, well,
experimenting?
not so much in the summertime, but especially, like a fall, winter, and a little bit of spring. I'll spend like Saturday or Sunday afternoon just like meal prepping, whether it's, recreating existing, dishes of mine, prepping for the week, or, being experimental and trying out new recipes because I truly do have a passion for food. And I guess I should actually rewind that for a second by saying, when cooking was just a hobby of mine before it was even any thought of being a career, I've discovered that when I cooked, when I was in those mundane jobs that, I didn't like and I wasn't always jazzed, I was so focused on what I was doing that it took all the stresses of the week away. And it just totally cleared my mind because I was just so focused on the food at hand. And funny enough, a lot of times when I catered events, I would literally have some clients come up to me and say, "Wow, you're so calm while you're cooking right now." And I actually it's like cooking is my zen. Even I could be catering an event for 20, 40, or 100 people, and I would just have that same focus and same zen, and I just tuned out all the noise. So I guess that is why I would say cooking is still a huge balance for
That's
me.
that's great. It's great to know that you're not just good at it. It is an actual passion of yours that fulfills you,
Truly is.
which is good to hear. Yeah, I can relate. Maybe not in dancing. I enjoy listening to music. One thing that I find myself as I sort of observe myself more is singing. Oddly enough, is one of mine, and
Love it.
exercising and working out obviously is in there too. And I kind of use that more as like a reset than a recharge, I would say. But I've noticed that if there are a certain amount of days or weeks that go by where I don't just take the time to listen to music and sort of sing along, I usually do it during when I'm riding in the car, driving somewhere. That's why I actually love road trips because I like to kind of do carpool karaoke while I'm in there. But
So I'm challenge you. Sorry to cut you off, but when I'm in Vegas next week, that means we have to do karaoke.
down, I will 100% do karaoke with you in Vegas. Yes, because I don't know that many people in Vegas, so there's no chance that I'm going to run into anyone that's going to hear us. But yeah, that's phenomenal. I love it absolutely. So with that, for me, singing is one that I feel like when I sing, I recharge. Fitness is sort of a reset. Luckily, going back to passions, meal prepping for me is very utilitarian. I don't really get fulfilled from cooking or meal prepping. For me, it's coaching and consulting. I'm I don't know what it is. I've struggled with my role in the military and being a leader and what that looked like. And my experience with being in the military is if I wasn't in a leadership position, I just was not happy. I wasn't fulfilled. I just kind of felt like I was clocking in, clocking out, part of the herd, that sort of thing. And I always thought that it had something to do with being in an authoritative role or, influencing the mission or the goal or whatever that might be. But I was actually at a networking event a couple of weeks ago, and I ran into a young lady who she's got 20 years as a VP of HR, and I was sharing sort of that experience with her on how we launched projection and the momentum internship program. And I shared with her, I was like, I am obsessed with this, the way that we have developed the culture and projection, the way that we coach and check-ins and communicate and run meetings. And it's been fascinating. We've had some people that, as they transition out of our program, we have an exit survey, right? Because we want feedback. And I was asking them, sort of playfully, I was saying, what's something that you really valued from being out of the program? And I didn't really know what to say next. So I just jokingly, I just said, what's something that you're going to miss? What's something you're going to, we know you're going to miss us. What are you going to miss? And the first person said, I'm going to miss the meetings. And I thought that they were kidding. And I was like, haha, very funny. Nobody in their right mind would ever say that. And then the second person that I did the exit interview said the same thing. And then the third person said the same thing. And going back to culture and the way that we communicate, and my conversation that I had with Alyssa, the VP of HR that I've connected with recently, and I was sharing with her that I'm so fulfilled doing what I do. And I love checking with my team members and running effective meetings and supporting them and communicating. And she was actually the one, and I told her, if I wasn't doing that in the military, I wasn't fulfilled. And she said, it sounds like your passion is for training, mentoring, and developing people. And I was like, wow, that is it. That is it. That is the thing that I kind of was circling in the military. And I always thought it was like, I'm supposed to be in the military to be a leader and lead the organization and achieve the mission. But it was actually not necessarily externally from the organization, what is the org doing, but internally working with my team and growing my team and helping support and develop and train people, which I now know that is 100% my passion. I brought that into what I do as a consultant. I really see myself as a consultant, also as a coach, which luckily my background in personal training has developed those skill sets of how to coach somebody and how to mentor somebody with the struggles of their business and what they're experiencing, and empowering them and showing them, hey, these are the things you're doing right, these are the things that you're not doing at all, and these are the things that we need to be doing better. So I know that when I coach, when I consult, it fulfills me, and I could do it all day long. I wish it was cooking. I would eat a lot more flavorful meals, but it is consulting for me. Let's hop into you know inspiration outside the kitchen, right? So I think that most people have the idea that you probably spend most of your time on TikTok and Pinterest, or going to Michelin star restaurants to get inspiration. But what are some things that you feel like, whether intentional or unintentional, that you find that inspire your craft and your skill and what you do?
Yeah, I would say definitely. I mean, yeah, like I mentioned, like going to restaurants and especially traveling and, meeting different chefs. Earlier on in my culinary career, it was actually kind of ironic. The first couple of years I was doing what I do, I think because I was just sort of in my own box and in my own world, not in the actual restaurant scene. People would often ask me, what other chefs are you friends with? Or do you have other chefs you could refer me to? And I was like, actually, no, I don't really know any. But then over time, especially when I became part of the chefluencer community, it was actually amazing. I was amongst all these amazing, talented chefs that I now can call some of them my close friends, especially my Chef Reina, Chef Rochelle, super talents. And, I would get inspiration from my friend chefs or then other chefs that I meet, especially like I mentioned. So I'm a host of this show, Flavors of the World, and I'm constantly in different kitchens, trying all different cuisines from all these amazing chefs. And I'm always just getting ideas and inspiration from them. And then, of course, there's the likes of, I frequent Instagram, out of all of the mediums, so to say. I think I live on there the most, where I'll just come across, different ideas and inspirations. And then travel, as I mentioned earlier, is a huge part of my life. And I have a couple of trips coming up that, I'm excited to go and explore food in new markets.
Yeah, I'm impressed by your Instagram and the quality of content that you produce. If you guys have time, you should go check out Melissa on Instagram. It's interesting also the type of content that you produce isn't just food, right? You do kitchen walkthroughs and equipment, reviews, and it's again, I think that it's interesting that it's almost like meeting an F1 driver that knows just as much about the car that they do about driving. There's a wealth of knowledge that you convey in your Instagram, and it shows with how developed it is. With that, one thing that I'm hearing more is, again, exposure. So not just staying in your bubble of close friends and the consistent experiences, but getting out there and being exposed to more and more. One thing that I find really rewarding for myself, that is sort of inspiring, is when I'm able to walk away from what I'm doing at projection and kind of turn my brain off, I say, and sort of unplug. It was the 4th of July recently. My buddy invited me to a fireworks show in Boulder City, and the only thing I expected to get out of it was see some fireworks. But it really provided me an opportunity to sort of passively just observe what was happening and reflect and spend time out and about doing something that isn't projection or the internship program or everything happening with the Phelan focus, everything happening with clients, and to kind of shift my mindset a little bit. And I think that that's one of the importance with having a variety of things that are happening. I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, they think that, well, if I want to be successful in this thing, I should only do this thing. I should focus solely on this one activity or in this one area. But again, it's about exposure and being able to pull from different experiences and communities and groups, different methodologies. I mean, even looking at different industries that and what's successful in one industry, the way that their business model is set up, their strategy, their business planning, their products and services, their pricing models, everything about their business. There are things that you can piecemeal together. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, they feel like they have to follow a certain equation to be successful, or that they just have to try to replicate something verbatim that's working with another company. Luckily, at Projection, we've done the opposite. We kind of threw the equations out the window and just started from scratch with everything from terminology, like with the Michelin management method that we use for project management, the way that we run our meetings, the way that we even have our org structure set up, the way we communicate with clients is all incredibly unique. There's a lot of pros and cons to that. Obviously, the learning curve is a little higher, but the value is definitely there. Going back to the focus of Dolce. So what would one thing be that you would want to see entrepreneurs sort of pursue with their businesses in the realm of ensuring that they're balanced? I'm sure that you've advised, kind of, mentored and spoken with a variety of entrepreneurs. Maybe, what are some things that they're doing to achieve balance that doesn't really make sense, or that you have seen in other entrepreneurs that they're doing to achieve balance that does make sense?
So one thing that I would suggest and recommend, this was actually a tool that I found so powerful when I was working with Jen Schultz, my coach rather, and literally write down on a piece of paper, what do I want? What don't I want? How do I want to feel? And how don't I want to feel? And I think when you answer those questions and you answer them in the perspective of your work life and your personal life, I think that will help you sort of shape and achieve what that balance could and should look like. And I also just want to add too, because you were mentioning, and I didn't get a chance to talk about this, is I too love being a mentor. I love giving back. And that's why, although as much as I love doing events, I know I have a voice. I have a voice to, share. And, I have so much knowledge when it comes to your points about, equipment, as well as, recipes and just being a girl boss and, my experience. And I just truly love being a mentor and an inspiration. A lot of times people are chronically telling me, oh my gosh, how do you do all this plus all the social stuff? And I am rare in that I guess I do have a lot of energy, although I do take probably 30 vitamins a day, which kind of goes back into my whole clean living, clean lifestyle. But I just want to be an inspiration and make, people want to sort of walk and talk the way that I do, just as successfully in their own respective career paths.
Melissa, you definitely are rare, and shout out to girl bosses out there. Going back, I know you have a lot of things that you're actively doing right now, and I'm sure that you have some passion projects that you're pursuing. I mean, what are some other things that you're up to besides what you've shared so far?
Absolutely. Yeah. So as I mentioned, I have pivoted quite a bit. And I'm actually going to touch back on the story of how and when and why I segued from doing events, sort of kind of pick back up from where I was when I stopped doing my events to where I am today. So in 2020, let's see, early 2022, I took on a job back in the appliance industry, part as a hybrid culinary and sales role, because now with my background, I was able to carve this sort of niche within the appliance industry that made me a subject matter expert now both on equipment and food. And I had an amazing job. I was covering US and Canada, traveling all the time for work and for business. Fortunately, the appliance industry in 24 was in disarray, and I resulted in my first layoff in my 20-year career, which was circumstantial, was not performance based, but it does happen. But at the same token, I was actually becoming a little bit stagnant in the 2 years that I was in that role, as much as I loved it. Again, I always had this burning desire to be an entrepreneur. So in the interim, I spent 24, I actually went back to meal prepping and doing some events just to sort of stay afloat because ironic timing is I purchased my first home summer of 23. So here I am as a homeowner, jobless. Yay! So that was scary. And it sort of goes back, and I love telling this story because, it's like the bell curve. You have your high points, then you have your low points, and it's how you get through those low points. So, like I said, I was meal prepping, doing events again. Then I landed a job working with Pat LaFrida meat purveyors, where I will say I had my second biggest career highlight because while working there last fall, I got to cook and execute my own recipes at the New York City Wine and Food Festival. That was an epic experience. They had a commissary kitchen, make a few of my recipes that were dished up, and then I was literally there cooking tomahawk steaks. And you could go on my Instagram, Chef Via Melissa, and see that video if you scroll down. So ironically so, talk about trials and tribulations. I then experienced my second layoff in a matter of 10 months. Again, not performance based, circumstantial because of the crazy times that we live in this world. That was January earlier this year. However, I was still looking to get back into the appliance industry because that's truly where I felt like I was home. And LaFrida was a great pivot within that time. So concurrently, I was interviewing with GE Appliances, Nestle, to work in food service, and then went actually to Vegas to a trade show where I then met this company called Telia Group in a divine meeting of sorts. And I had conversations with Telia Group, and they curate and import products from Italy, from custom doors, custom cabinets for kitchen and bath and closet solutions. A month later, I then was offered a job with GE Appliances. And if there's one thing that I learned after having two layoffs in a 10-month time frame is to not put all your eggs in one basket. So my main role right now is being a senior area sales manager with GE Appliances. On the side, I'm slowly, just making some connections with Telia Group, just seeing where that can go because it also could be very lucrative if I do get that off the ground. But as I mentioned, I'll still never give up, being the entrepreneur that I am in the kitchen. So within my role with GE, I actually got the blessing to kind of start putting my content creation spin to feature my clients and then cross market my brand, my clients, and then of course GE. So it's a really great niche, sweet spot on top of course, my everyday duties and responsibilities there. And then I also, so I'll be doing that sort of a podcast, video cast series, and then also just start doing my own podcast, how to's within food as well, or, just, culinary tips and cooking tips and just anything, all food and girl boss related, just to then eventually start creating my digital assets and then sell, digital products online. So that's sort of the iteration of where I came post running my event business, where I am now. I know that was a very long-winded answer and a lot to digest, but I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah, yeah. And, again, what a fascinating evolution. And, hearing the beginning of your journey and your story and kind of where it all started. And, I wasn't even sure how all of this was going to play out and your previous career and getting into becoming a chef and now seeing that those are, very synergistic and they actually, are, mutually beneficial along the way, which is really, really cool. And congratulations for being showcased at that event in New York. And now we know who's going to be catering the next projection event that we'll host in Las Vegas.
Absolutely.
And yeah, you are definitely someone that is taking life by the horns, and you sound like you live an incredibly fulfilled life. And so, from us, a projection, we're grateful that the layoff occurred because that's when we were able to connect and meet. And having you be a part of projection as a senior consultant and advisor over the last year has been incredibly rewarding. It's been fascinating to learn more about you and work with you more, and really excited about what you have going on. And going back to, I mean, back to back layoffs is difficult. And I want to tie this into Dolce a little more for the listeners and viewers. I think that having that balance is really important as well. I think oftentimes that entrepreneurs particularly, they'll put all their eggs in one basket, whether it's, a 9 to 5 with your side hustle, and then you lose your 9 to 5, there goes your side hustle, or vice versa. You kind of put all your eggs in the basket of your side hustle and then it doesn't work out. And then now you're kind of back to square one. What is missing from that equation is that balance, that interpersonal, passion, hobbies, projects, I lived my life sort of in the opposite direction where I had a slew of hobbies, right? I came back from Italy to my house in Las Vegas and there was 9 classic motorcycles and project bikes and there was 5 classic cars. And I came back and I was like, whoa, I guess during COVID, I really kind of went off the deep end with those projects. And so since then I've sold next to all of them. But aligning yourself with passion projects and hobbies that are rewarding and fulfilling for you. And that was one thing that I struggled with when I came back is having to decide and determine, which of these motorcycles and classic cars I'm going to get rid of and which ones I'm going to keep. And as things began to progress further with projection, it became easier and easier to let go of these previous hobbies and passion projects and take on new ones. Like the Phelan Focus, obviously, is my newest passion project, and it's been incredibly rewarding and fulfilling. I'm really happy to have this opportunity and really grateful for being able to connect with individuals like yourself and learn more about your journey and be able to share what you've been through, kind of what I've been through, and to continue to inspire in some situations and advise and coach and mentor young professionals that are looking at launching whether their career, their business, their startup, or working with business owners in a consulting capacity with developing their team or developing their business. And so, to kind of tie into the aspect of Dolce is really looking at your business and what you're doing, not necessarily as just the business, but also you and your lifestyle and the other things that you have to do to ensure that you stay fulfilled outside of that so that if things don't go well, either with your career or your business, you can still maintain. And that's something that we push our team members for in projection is to ensure that they have some sort of a balance and the aspect or the approach. Our philosophy of projection isn't work-life balance. We actually equate it to being a life-work balance. We actually spend significant amount of time with our team members, ensuring that they are putting their life and their well-being first, especially because everyone works remotely. And, it's very easy to become consumed in your job and be in too many meetings or working on too many projects. So we want to ensure that our team members are being fulfilled with their personal lives and, supporting and take care of their families and able to travel and whatnot. And that us as a team, we're supporting them because all of our team members support us with what we have going on as well. Melissa, I want to wrap up the Dolce section with going over the why, right? Or helping team members identify their why. And so this circles back to the philosophy conversation that we started early on in Dolce, looking at what is your strategy for your business? What is your perspective on aligning your passion, your personal goals, and whatever sort of interpersonal mission or driver that you have? How have you experienced that you've been able to do that? I mean, it sounds like you've kind of hit the nail on the head in a way with what you're doing, and it seems like you're balancing it all out very well. But for the listeners and the viewers, how would you advise that people identify their why? Like, how would somebody know that they're on the right path? I would say.
Yeah, I would say one of the best ways is to, see what energizes you, see if you have any sort of hobby or idea, whether it be product based or service based, what do you get excited about? And what that is there any sort of unique selling proposition within that that'll make your product or service stick out, amongst the competition, or how can you fine tune it? That it could be. But once you sort of hone in on, what energizes you, what feels right, and it just feels natural, that's when you know that you're on the right path. And that kind of goes back to the foundation of, writing down those 4 questions. What do I want? What don't I want? How do I want to feel? How don't I want to feel? And, and even just write down, like, I'm a huge believer, I'm very, very spiritually connected, which this has probably occurred in the last couple of years. But, write down, manifest, vision, do vision boards, be very specific, and just, try to listen to your inner guidance. Like for me, I've just always had this like burning desire and this like, it's so hard to explain. And I don't know, maybe if you can relate to that or not, feel in. But that's the best way that I could sort of sum it up.
It's nice to hear that you're kind of living your why in a way, and that you're so passionate about what you do, and you're able to express that. I think that that's one thing that I've experienced over the last year, or a year and a half with projection is not hitting burnout. I mean, obviously, I get tired. There are incredibly long days. There are
Mhm.
long nights, and I think that really identifying the impact that you want to create with your life or what sort of experience you want to generate for others, being true to the thing that drives you the most. I have a strong passion for for leather crafting, I thought about it recently. If I had to pack up everything and do one thing, I think I would just open a leather crafting shop. I've got a business partner that has a leather crafting studio in Athens, Greece, and he helped me launch Zephyr Aero Leather, who's one of the sponsors of the podcast, along with Projection, and understanding what it is for me. I know why I'm sort of enriched when I do leather crafting, or when I'm working with leather, and I want other people to have that same experience. And I think it's the same for me with coaching and consulting. I've been in a situation where I've struggled. I had no idea where to start with a business, time and time and time again. And then you learn a little more and then it doesn't work out. And then you learn a little more and then that one doesn't work out. And going through that iteration over and over and being able to pull people out of that chaos and show them that, in projection, that chaos is an opportunity for you to, kind of assess what's happening and pick out the positive validators versus the negative validators, the positive feedback versus the negative feedback, and really, use that feedback in a specific way to keep you on that path and to continue to validate you. And so I think for me, what I would advise anyone starting a business or anyone who has a startup or a small business, and a way to assess if you're on the right path isn't so much regarding, obviously there's a monetary aspect. How is the business performing? Sales, services, your team members, what does success look like from a metric standpoint? But again, you brought it up earlier, there's no sort of scary Sundays, right? There's no case of the Mondays. I'm yet to have that at projection, and I hope, hopefully never will. It's quite the opposite. On Friday, I'm already excited for Monday. I wish I could skip the weekend, and even yesterday, we're shooting this on a Wednesday. Yesterday was Tuesday, and we just finished a round of all of our project things. And I was already planning for next Monday. I'm like, I cannot wait for next Monday's meetings based off of what happened on Monday and Tuesday. Like there's all of these things we're going to implement that are going to be really, really rewarding. And I think that that's it, right? It's what jazzes you up, because at the end of the day, it's not that you're working for a company and then so that you can have a life. That job is your life, however way you look at it. If you're commuting to work and then sitting in an office for 8 hours, that's 10 hours of your waking day that you're spending. I mean, that is your life at the end of the day. And so, for me, assessing that, whether you're working inside of a company for someone else, or if you're starting a company, or if you're trying to start something on your own and you're trying to assess, am I on the right path? And is this, something that I should continue to pursue? I've often reflected that, I would continue to do what I'm doing regardless if it ever works out. And I know that I will always coach, I will always consult, because I want to help people with what they're doing. And I want to continue to express the impact. And like, one of the aspects of projection is that we work with non-for-profits, because I want to be able to support that non-for-profit and being able to scale its impact in whatever sort of modality that might be. I want to close the Dolce section with, kind of touching on that path. And I know that a lot of entrepreneurs are struggling with trying to kind of carve out their own path in a way with their business and with their purpose. What do you think is one thing that has kept you on this path over the last couple of years? Because I'm sure that the paradigm shifts that you've shared, I'm sure there's many more. I mean, you shared your mom with her health and her battle with cancer. You shared dealing with 2 layoffs. How do you stay on that path? What are the things that have kept you on the path?
Yeah, I think just knowing that intuitively, I just feel like I have more greatness ahead of me. I feel like although I've had quite a bit of success, as an event business entrepreneur, I think within business development, my content creation and everything eventually sort of cultivating and coming together, I still feel like I'm just getting started and there's just a lot more greatness and bigger things ahead of me. And I think that's what my drive truly is. And one thing I do want to actually touch on, just piggybacking on what you were just saying, is as great as it is to, have like your path and your, business idea and whatever it is that you want to get started, also be realistic and know what your limitations are. I mean, obviously, I've been talking about how I've done a lot of this on my own, but of course, when I was executing events, I had a sous chef, I had bussers, I had servers, I had bartenders. I mean, there was a whole team of people assisting me and supporting me. And, I wasn't a bartender. I mean, I was when I was younger, but like in the sense of, let's say if you're launching a product and, you're great at ideation, but you're not great at graphics, get a graphics guy, get somebody that's specialized in that skill set that you're not specialized in, because the last thing you want to ever do is try to take it all on by yourself. And then you're great at one thing, but not great at another thing. And then overall, your thing is only mediocre because you didn't subspecialize and outsource where you needed to.
That's interesting. So, you're saying what has kept you on your path is actually been building a team through these different iterations and phases of your business and being able to hand off certain aspects. One thing that you noted that I think is really fascinating that we should hit on is that you noted that you feel like you can continue to pursue this because there are greater and bigger things for you to pursue. I can relate. One thing that I share with business owners and entrepreneurs when they launch their business is I congratulate them, number one, for doing so. And I get really excited because I know, having been on the journey that I've been on, when a buddy of mine launches an Airbnb business or when they launch their first ecom business, or, in some situations where they invest in their first property, I like to put in perspective and share that what's the most exciting is that this is just your first one. This is your first sale. This is your first event. This is your first side hustle. This is your first investment property. This is your first, whatever that might be. Because having been on that journey, and that's one thing that drives me, and I think that you can relate to that, is, when you're going down the path, everything seems new because it is new. It's all compounding, and you're not like, oh my God, here we go. Here's another event to do, or here we go. Here's another meeting to do. It's like this meeting is going to unlock the next round of opportunities. This event is going to lead to these other events, instead of looking at it from sort of I think the culture that some entrepreneurs might pull in is like this reoccurring sort of cyclical 9 to 5 of like, it's going to be the same thing over and over and over. And I really want to do this. But if you're really approaching your business and your skill set from a growth mindset, I think that might be kind of the overarching theme is looking at what you're doing as a modality for growth, for personal growth, for business growth, for relationship growth, for community growth. With that, I think it shifts, and it's no longer like, okay, I have to do these things to then get paid, to then do these things to then get paid. It's number one, I love what I'm doing. So I want to do it because I want to do it. If I can be compensated a fair rate for that and make a profit, that would be ideal. And as I'm doing that, I'm learning more skills, and I'm meeting new people, and I'm able to be exposed to new things and learn more and produce more impact and, create more value. And, things ebb and flow in life, right? There are seasons that we go through in life. Tastes change, right? Melissa, I can attest to that. I get burned out on a certain meal prep and I'm like, all right, I got to switch this up. And so I think the same thing happens as well in business. It's like, okay, we've been doing this. This has been working great. I think the market is starting to shift. These tastes are starting to shift. Our clients' tastes are, or now that we're a developer, we have a new team member, we have these new capabilities. And so approaching it from this ever evolving thing, I think that a lot of business owners, they're trying to nail it. Like they're trying to lock and bolt their business down in a way where they're like, okay, if I can just get it to do this one thing, it's like, why would you bolt a Ferrari down in your garage? That defeats the purpose. Like, but then I never lose it. It's like, but then you never get to drive it, but then I risk, it having an accident. Like, okay, then that's what have you. Have insurance on your Ferrari. Make sure that you drive it safely, take a safety course, and things happen. Or you could have a phenomenal road trip and, create these amazing experiences in it. And so I value your perspective in what you're saying. And I think that we're similar in that way, where every opportunity is a growth opportunity to sort of experience something new and continue to learn and grow. And if you can build a team while you're doing that, if you can build a community, if you can build relationships, if you can build a business, I think all of that is just, icing on the cake. So I think this Dolce, portion was really rewarding for me. So I appreciate it.
It was rather sweet, pun intended.
Yes, nailed it. So I want to transition into sort of segueing into an outro, going back to how can people support you with your business? I mean, they're probably going to get tired of hearing about the Phelan focus and what we have going on there, and projection and the momentum internship program and what we're doing. I'd like to plug, obviously, Zephyr Aero Leather and some of our clients in the future. And thank you for everyone who's listening, and thank you for your time. Even if you've only listened to 5 or 10 minutes of this, depending on what episode you've listened to. We shot Primi, Secondi, and then now we just wrapped up Dolce. So Melissa, in the future, how can the viewers, how can the listeners support you and your endeavors and what you're up to, and what should they be looking forward to that you have going on next?
Absolutely. Well, the first way that anybody and everybody can support me is to follow me on all of my social channels, whether it is Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube at Chef Via Melissa. That's Chef Viamelissa, as well as if you ever have an idea, I'm very approachable. I'm always, open-minded, looking to partnership, help somebody out. Don't hesitate to reach out. And then if you do, start to follow me, watch my content, be interactive with me, then when I sell digital assets, consider them. But we're all about, like Phelan said, and we've all been, kind of touching on for the last almost 2 hours is, community, building community, especially because sometimes when you're an entrepreneur, you feel like you could be on an island all by yourself. I certainly have felt that way at some points. So I just want, whether you're an existing entrepreneur or a budding entrepreneur, don't feel like you have to be on an island by yourself.
Yeah. Well, if I ever found you on an island, I would assume that it was tropical based off of what I know about you so far. This is kind of a fun one just for me. What is your preferred platform to, engage on? I tell people all the time, do not email me. Just contact me on LinkedIn. I despise email. I try to avoid it as much as possible. But I live on LinkedIn. What is your preferred platform?
Yeah. Oh, and actually, thanks. I didn't even realize. Yeah. And you could also find me on LinkedIn. You could look up Chef Via Melissa or Melissa Eboli, Eboli. My preferred platforms would either be actually LinkedIn and or Instagram.
Instagram, yeah. Yeah, I know you have a really strong following on Instagram. I'm just restructuring my Instagram, just kicked off TikTok. Not my idea, but the team's backed me on that. And so we're looking for the Phelan Focus to be successful and to support the continued success and projection. And Melissa, it was a pleasure having you today. I genuinely enjoyed doing this. I'm looking forward to our next one in the future, and yeah, I'm looking forward to working with you again in the future.
Thanks, Phelan. Likewise. Thank you so much for having me. I think this was great. And I feel like in talking, as you know, my wheels are always turning. And I have so many other ideas of, topics and such that, we could even do for future casts. So stay tuned for more from yours truly, Chef Via Melissa and Phelan.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't doubt that. And I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for tuning in to the Phelan Focus. If today's episode sparked new ideas or inspired action, please leave a comment, subscribe, or review on your favorite platform. Connect with us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and X at The Phelan Focus, or visit our website for more resources at thephelanfocus.com. Keep an eye out for new episodes wherever you get your favorite podcast, and until next time, stay focused.